Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, I heard your kartals there.
Yes, yes. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Advaita Gadadha Sivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadha Sivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadha Sivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hey Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajaka Ashto Turasati Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj, and thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, for leading us in Kirtan, and welcome everyone to Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Friday, August 26th, 2022, at least in the Western Hemisphere, and we are reading in the third canto, 7th chapter, and if I'm correct, we are starting tonight with verse number 11. Is that what you also have, Maharaj? And so we're very happy that Maharaj could be with us, broadcasting live from the Govardhan Eco Village in India, and eager to hear everyone's questions and comments. Please don't be shy, and I'll be posting links so that you can share this class opportunity with others. And thank you for being with us, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Kendra Prabhu. Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Thank you to all. Again, I'm phone-based today, so if I miss some comments, you can just point them out to me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yatajale Chandramasa Kampadis Tadkrito Gunaha Drishyate Sannapi Drashtur Atmano Natmano Gunaha. As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. Purport: the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, is compared to the moon in the sky, and the living entities are compared to the reflection of the moon on water. The moon in the sky is fixed and does not appear to quiver like the moon on the water. Actually, like the original moon in the sky, the moon reflected on the water should also not quiver. But because of being associated with water, the reflection appears to be quivering, although in actual fact, the moon is fixed. The water moves, but the moon does not move. Similarly, the living entities appear to be tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries, although in the pure soul, such qualities are completely absent. The word pratiyate, which means apparently and not actually, like the experience of having one's head cut off in a dream, is significant here. The reflection of the moon on the water is the separated rays of the moon and not the actual moon. The separated parts and parcels of the Lord, entangled in the water of material existence, have the quivering quality, whereas the Lord is like the actual moon in the sky, which is not at all in touch with water. The light of the sun and moon reflected on matter makes the matter bright and praiseworthy. The living symptoms are compared to the light of the sun and the moon, illuminating material manifestations like trees and mountains. The reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as the real sun or moon by less intelligent men, and the pure monistic philosophy develops from these ideas. In fact, the light of the sun and the moon are actually different from the sun and moon themselves, although they are always connected. The light of the moon spread throughout the sky appears to be impersonal, but the moon planet as it is personal, and the living entities on the moon planet are also personal. In the rays of the moon, different material entities appear to be comparatively more or less important. The light of the moon on the Taj Mahal appears more beautiful than the same light in the wilderness. Although the light of the moon is the same everywhere, due to being differently appreciated, it appears different. Similarly, the light of the Lord is equally distributed everywhere, but due to being differently received, it appears to be different. One should not, therefore, accept the reflection of the moon on the water as actual and misunderstand the whole situation through monistic philosophy. The quivering quality of the moon is also variable. When the water is standing still, there's no quivering. A more settled conditioned soul quivers less. But due to material connection, the quivering quality is more or less present everywhere. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pradijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yata jale chandramasa kampadis tatkrito gunaha trishyate sun api gashtur atmano natmano gunaha. The Srila Prabhupada pulls a lot of comparisons here in the verse. But let's start with the basic point. Yata jale, as in the water, Chandramasa, the moon, Kampadis tatkrito, shows signs like trembling, kampa, and so on. Tatkrita guna, actually the moon is not trembling, but in the water it appears to be trembling because it's associated with the water, and the water is trembling. So the drishyate, so it's seen similarly that drashtu, the consciousness, the living being, the observer, although he's spirit soul, seems to have qualities that don't belong to the spirit soul, material qualities. He appears to undergo material miseries. He appears to undergo birth and death. So many things appear to be going on that have nothing to do with him. The example given in the previous verse was that of the person who sees his head cut off in a dream. And if he sees it, then it's not a problem. But his head must be there. So similarly here, it may look like the moon is fluttering and trembling and moving about this way, tossing about. But that has nothing to do with the moon. That's just the water. And it appears to us that, because that's what we're looking at, that the moon is affected in those ways. So it appears that the self is affected by material qualities, but no, it's not. Another example given elsewhere in Bhagavatam, I believe it's a verse, although it could be a purport. We see the moon moving in the sky. I've sometimes noticed this, that sometimes the moon has really appeared to be racing across the sky. But what's really going on is that the clouds are moving quickly. There's a wind moving the clouds rapidly across the sky. The moon is sitting there in one place, but because it's against the background of the clouds, the moon appears to be moving swiftly, racing across the sky. So all of these examples point to the same thing, that the events that are going on in the life of the living entity in conditioned existence has no meaning. It's a misperception. It's a misunderstanding that we have these material qualities, that material life is in some way real. Yes. Then, yes, that the self is associated with matter, so it appears to be qualified as matter. This is where the reductionistic scientists are thrown off. They're looking at matter, they see the changes, but they're looking at the body, they see all the material things going on, and they figure that's it. What we're looking at, what you see is what you get. What we're looking at is the reality. But they don't know that what they're seeing is consciousness reflected in matter, consciousness associated with matter, and that these properties of consciousness do appear to emerge at a certain point, do appear to be dismantled at a certain point. These qualities are not the qualities of consciousness. they're the qualities of what consciousness has become associated with. So they're tricked in this way. Then the Prabhupada pulls another comparison out of this, that the living entities are the ones who are reflected, and the personality of Godhead is the one who's not reflected. As the moon is steady in the sky, but the image of the moon on the water, it's differently situated. So the Lord is always transcendental, and the living entities are the ones who are bobbing up and down. The living entities are like the reflected light of the moon, and the Lord is the moon itself. And so while the living entities are tossing about in material existence, the personality of Godhead is transcendentally situated. And Prabhupada said the living entities shouldn't be going through this either, but because they're associated with matter, this is happening, just as the moonlight or the image of the moon goes through these transformations in the water. Let's see if there's something else I want to pull out here. The living entities, the light of the sun and moon reflected in matter makes the matter bright and praiseworthy. So the body or anything material seems to, picks up vitality by the presence of consciousness. Prabhupada gives the example of a living person appears brilliant or attractive, but a dead body is not at all attractive. So the body is getting brilliance from the light of consciousness, but consciousness is not picking up its existence from the body. Then a further example Prabhupada picks up or gives us is that the moonlight spread throughout the sky appears impersonal, but the moon itself is specific and personal. And the living entities on the moon are also personal. And then again, a further elaboration that the different material entities appear more or less important in the rays of the moon due to the local situation. So the moonlight on the Taj Mahal appears gorgeous, more so than the moonlight in the desert. And then finally, one last point Prabhupada puts in is that the water itself is not consistently disturbed. Some places more disturbed, some places more still. So according to the modes of material nature, some living entities are more peaceful and some more turbulently situated. But in any case, the living entity really has nothing to do with matter. Asango hiyam purusha. All right, any further comments or questions here? Vijay Krishna. Can we hear that one? Because again, I'm on my phone.
Yes, Maharaj, of course. Question number 1. Yes, because of, quote, being associated with water, end quote, we become tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries. But if I may say it, all of these inconveniences are due to the fact that it doesn't matter where or when, with whom or with what, we just want to be happy because we are parts and parcels of the Supreme Enjoyer. So based on this, my question is, how to avoid all the inconveniences while trying to feel comfortable and blissful?
You're not going to avoid all these while trying to feel comfortable and blissful. It's like you're expecting, you want the head side of the coin and not the tail side. But if you're going to pick up the coin, you're going to have both sides. You can't avoid it. If you go out into the beauty of nature on a summer evening, you're going to have the mosquitoes. You can't avoid that. They're going to be there. And you can try to, mosquito cream or this or that or the other thing. But the basic troubles are going to be there. As long as we're trying to enjoy material nature, the suffering associated with material nature is going to be there also. We can't have, that's our project, all the good and none of the bad, all the enjoyment and none of the suffering. It doesn't work that way. Even if we think, now I've got it, the next moment we're kicked out and we have to go to another body.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
You're most welcome, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Andrew.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. There is one statement that Prabhupada makes here that I wasn't able to somehow or other make the connection. He says that the reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as the real sun or moon by less intelligent men. And then he says, and the pure monistic philosophy develops from these ideas.
Yeah. The reflection, a less intelligent person looks at the moon and the water and says, there's the moon. And just isn't sophisticated enough or smart enough to see that, wait a second, I'm looking at the reflection of the moon. He sees this is the moon. The reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as the real sun or moon by less intelligent men. So they identify the reflection with the reality. So similarly, the living entities who are reflected facts from the Lord are seen to be identical with the Lord by the pure monists. That's their vision. So again, this is one of those sort of subsidiary comparisons that Srila Prabhupada's pulling out of the verse. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, it certainly does. The less intelligent person sees the reflection, thinks it's the actual substance, and in the same way, someone without knowledge of Krishna, the person, the source of all these things, sees all the reflections and thinks that's it, essentially. Is that what you mean to say?
He knows there's a moon, and he thinks, no difference. The moon I'm seeing is the moon. He doesn't distinguish the reflection. He accepts the reflection as the thing. So the idea here is that we look at the living entities and we say, I'm Brahmasmi. The living entity is also Brahma. But he doesn't distinguish that this is the reflection from Brahma. These are the rays of Brahma. He thinks this is Brahma, the moon is the moon. So the moon is, so in that way. Hare Krishna, thank you. Anything else? I was thinking, there's always the question of theodicy, the question of, as it's been put, why bad things happen to good people, why the living entity should be suffering, how God could be just if there's such misery in the world, and so on. This is a perennial theological problem. And here that's answered by saying it's not happening. I think it's Dostoevsky gives the example someplace, or maybe it's Dostoevsky, Nietzsche. I only read it in a secondary source. Some soldiers have they've arrested a woman and the child, and they play with the child in the presence of the mother by holding a gun to the child's head and so on. And I think they finally blow it off, and just for sport. And the mother, for the mother, of course, this is unbearably painful, excruciating. So these are the kinds of miseries that happen to the conditioned souls. How then could God be just? And here, these are just appearances. All the anartha upasama shaksha, all of these miseries are superfluous or illusory, like the experience of being chased by the tiger in the dream. So, how can there be a God if in my dream I'm suffering? Well, it's just a dream. It's not substantial. No, it is substantial. You're trivializing it. No, wake up and you'll see what it is. Okay.
We have two hands up. First Saraswati Mata and then Athena Mata.
Yes. Saraswati.
Pranam Parampuchya Maharaj. The last class in this class, I'm sure, like many other people, has left me very subdued. But as surmised, conditional souls, we understand, are hallucinating or quivering to varying degrees based on their association with Maya. But there may be moments of lucidity where I can appreciate how separated from my constitutional servitude position I really am. But the task to regain that position can also seem extremely daunting. In addition, while hallucinating, you can hear voices that taunt you, that tells you that you cannot ever regain your position, or that whatever efforts you make, you're just going to be met with failure. So in my case, I'm thinking like marketing ads that we see so often, one step at a time, one breath at a time. So now I tell myself, whether I'm hallucinating or otherwise, to chant the Maha Mantra one at a time. And even though it's full of offenses, and I may hardly be making a dent in the path back to Krishna, I cannot give up the hope that with the mercy of Guru, Sadhu, and Vaishnavas, Krishna will listen to their pleas of helping the conditional jivas to somehow reach the stage where they can chant without any offenses and regain their eternal position of servitude. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Very, very well put. Thank you very much. And Athena.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranams. I joined a little late, but I think you mentioned just topic of the presence of the soul. And it made me think of a recent conversation that I had with a philosopher. He's agnostic, and he was arguing how chickens don't have souls, but pigs do. And so I gave I don't know the Sanskrit term, but the evidence, the 6 symptoms of the presence of the soul. So birth, growth, maintenance, reproduction, dwindling, and death. That those are the signs that a soul is present. But he came back to me and said, so you're telling me a candle flame has a soul because it is born, it grows, it maintains, it has the ability to reproduce, it dwindles, and it dies. And I didn't actually have an answer to that because, of course, we know fire comes from the Agni deity. But when I mentioned the 6 symptoms of the presence of a soul, a candle flame or fire also exhibits these 6 symptoms. So how would you properly, I guess, refute that or address that question? Thank you so much.
Interesting, interesting comeback on these different qualities. I suppose I would have started with a different question for him or a different approach. Okay, the chicken has life and a pig doesn't, or the other way around, has a soul, the other doesn't. What's the difference between a living pig and a dead pig? A living chicken and a dead chicken? We recognize in both that there's a similar difference. The pig has life, the chicken has life. The life leaves the body of the pig, life leaves the body of the chicken. So why distinguish that one has consciousness and the other doesn't, or soul, or whatever you want to call it? What's the on what grounds can you say that? That's where I would start with him. He's sort of taking 2 very similar cases and trying to make them totally different in some way, in a fundamental way, without reason. It's as if I were to say, well, women don't have souls. Men do, but women don't, on whatever grounds. But then when you look at it, there's a living woman and a dead woman, and a living man and a dead man. The difference is not there. The difference between the 2 cases. So why should we make this distinction? This species has life, that species doesn't have life. And they all go through this same transformation from having life to being lifeless. Otherwise, as far as the critique of the Satvikar, these transformations, that's clever. I hadn't thought about it. I'll have to think about that one more, come back to it. Yeah, candles born. Of course, in growth, you don't really see growth in a candle. Missing that one.
But the fire can grow from the spark and then it grows. And then also, while it doesn't automatically reproduce, it has the ability to reproduce. It does. I mean, I thought that was actually very clever as well. I didn't have a good answer to it, except, I forgot what I said, but, it's really actually comes from the Agni deity, but it, fire does exhibit, like, when there's from the spark to the growth to the maintenance to it has the ability to reproduce and then dwindles and dies. And I didn't have an answer to that.
Yeah, I don't have a quick answer to that one.
I was chatting with a very, very intelligent philosopher, so he got me there. But prior to that, it was interesting that actually he measured the presence of a soul by intelligence, actually. So he didn't think plants had souls. He didn't think chickens had souls. And of course, that, had the whole argument that there's a hierarchy, of course, of intelligence. But he also mentioned. I'm sorry?
I guess idiots don't have souls either.
Right, idiots. I love that one. I should have said that. I wasn't as witty or clever as you. But that's, yes. But, also on this topic now, this similar topic, but now with if you remember the Buddhist offshoot, Buddhist sect person I was speaking with, he had mentioned, well, again, their source is this supposedly enlightened person. But he, in the book, writes that when you transcend to a certain dimension, you're able to see, of course, the souls in every every living entity. And the argument is that actually everything has souls. So actually, a cup has a soul. What? That absolutely everything has a soul. So a cup has a soul, a pencil has a soul, a bowl has a soul. And again, I also here gave the example of the 6 symptoms. So I would say, well, a chair doesn't have a soul.
If you're whatever device you're using, it's not producing the greatest.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on it. I apologize. I'm out. So I put myself headset at once. Is this possibly better?
I can't really say, but what will make it better is just going a little slower.
Oh, sure. Let me put the headset in because I did hear that slightly better. So I will speak slower and into. Is that better?
That is.
Okay. Maybe it wasn't pushed in all the way. So this Buddhist practitioner had mentioned that, and he knows people who can, supposedly, that they can speak to everything. So everything has a soul. A table has a soul. A lamp post has a soul. A window has a soul. And essentially everything that's created has a purpose. And these people can actually speak to them. And of course, I from our philosophy, the 6 symptoms. So I argue that a car does not have a soul. A pencil does not have a soul. Oh, I'm sorry. But supposedly he said there are people who can, and if you reach to a higher dimension. I'm curious. I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Okay. Well, first thought is that it's very un-Buddhist. Buddhist doctrine is anatma, that there's no such thing as a soul. And here we're getting souls everywhere.
It's an offshoot. It's
so
called follow.
We're not going to hold them. We're not going to hold them to being strictly Buddhist. It's just a passing observation. The next is, all right, everything has a soul. We also accept that the Krishna is the soul of everything. Why a distinct, different soul in a cup and a saucer? But there's consciousness everywhere. That's all right. And what is the source of that consciousness? Let him trace that back. All right, a cup has consciousness in some way, and a highly advanced person can recognize that consciousness. Let that same highly advanced person inquire from the cup, what is the source of your consciousness? Where does consciousness originally come from? That would be of interest. Not that, if he talks to the cup and the cup said X, that's now the authority has spoken. But I mean to say that he should, one can take this line of approach that, all right, if I see consciousness everywhere, how did it get everywhere? Where is it coming from?
Thank you, Maharaj. But I guess we would say the soul is really the presence of a jiva. And, I would argue that a chair doesn't have a jiva. There is no presence. And of course, Krishna is in every atom, Vishnu is, but, one explanation I'd heard is that, Krishna has the chit shakti and achit shakti, the achit meaning the kind of the unconscious energy, because everything's energy of Krishna. So while everything exists on Krishna, which is consciousness, there is still a difference between his chit shakti and achit shakti. So the inanimate object are his achit shakti, and that is, in one sense, it's the lack of the jiva, and I guess, the consciousness energy that, that makes the difference between the animate and inanimate objects.
Yeah, what you're saying is perfectly good. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada has said that since Krishna is everywhere, the jivas are everywhere. And so the jivas can be found, in rocks and in everything. So in the atom even, you could say that in every atom there's a jiva, exactly. And again, that's a state of consciousness that's beyond our, at least my present level of realization, how that's so. So rather than argue, no, there's not a jiva there. All right, even if you take it that there's jivas everywhere. What is that? In Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Sampajade Tada. There's someplace in the Bhagavad Gita that the realized soul sees that the living entities are everywhere. All right, so we'll take that. But again, what's the source of all these living entities? That's the question in Vedanta. What is the source of everything? So the accepting that there's consciousness everywhere, or there are living beings everywhere, we won't quibble about, exactly where they are and where they're not, but taking it that they're everywhere. What's the source of those living beings? I'm consciousness, but I can't say that the entire creation is dependent on me, or that it's working because of some power that I have. So what is that? Thank you, Yada Bhuta Pritag Bhava Ekastamana Tadeva Chuvistaram Brahma Sampajade Sampajate Tada. Self-realized person sees consciousness is everywhere. Living beings are everywhere. So all right, now what's the source of those living beings? Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanam. The Upanishads say among all the living beings, there's one supreme living being. We're taking his point, his other point, that there's a hierarchy of living beings. There's cups and there's saucers and there's those kinds of creatures, if you want to take them as creatures. Then there's pigs. And then if you think chickens are higher than pigs, then there's chickens. And if you think cows are higher than chickens, there's cows. And then there's someplace we come to human beings, and then we come to the brilliant human beings, the most advanced human beings, because intelligence is differently manifest. The cup doesn't show a heck of a lot of intelligence. The pig shows a little more. Maybe you think the chickens show more. The monkeys show more. The human beings show more. Among the human beings, some have greater intelligence. So there's this hierarchy that he's pointed out of different grades of living beings, showing different degrees of intelligence. So now go beyond the human beings, go beyond all other living beings. You'll finally come to the supreme living being. That's the statement of the Upanishads.
Thank you, Maharaj. That's a fantastic answer, and I'll be sure to remember that the next time we have this type of conversation. But it's interesting, as if you're agreeing that absolutely everything has a jiva, then how come a cup doesn't show the 6 symptoms if we're saying that that is the pramana for the presence of a jiva? And then actually, since we are also saying certain, rocks and mountains, even certain bodies of water like Ganga, Yamuna have personalities, how come, they don't show the 6 symptoms either of the jiva. So how do we make sense of that, those two things?
Well, when we're looking at that level of things, when we're looking at things from the level of seeing consciousness everywhere, presumably we're not doing it by just holding up a yardstick and saying, well, does it grow? We're just seeing that consciousness is everywhere. Or the way Prabhupada put it, Krishna is everywhere, so the living beings must be everywhere. Now, for our practical purposes and general discrimination, this yardstick is applied. It appears, it grows, it stays for some time. It has byproducts, it dwindles, it dies. These are the stages that the living beings go through. But if one is at that level of consciousness where he sees life everywhere, he doesn't have to, square it all up with these changes. He just sees consciousness is everywhere.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. I remember when Prabhupada had made that remark, then immediately various devotees in ISKCON who were more intellectually inclined started puzzling over that and trying to make sense of it and so on, and not with a whole lot of success, because it's a question of realization.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything else?
Tulsi Priya has a comment. Would you? I'll read it unless you'd like to. All right. She says, so if we're not factually suffering, where are we and what is actually going on with us?
We're on the water. And what's going on is that we're bobbing up and down and breaking apart and falling together again and all of this stuff. But that has nothing to do with us, because we have no real relationship with the water. Where we're being chased by a tiger, it doesn't really matter whether we're in Kansas or in, because in dreams there are tigers in Kansas too. Whether you're in Kansas or in Bengal, being chased by a tiger is terrifying wherever you are, and at the same time illusory when it's in a dream. Where you are in the dream doesn't really matter. Where you are, and exactly where is dreamland? Where exactly is dreamland? It is a question, but it is quite a fine question. But dreamland is that place where reality is not, where only a reflection, a perverted reflection of reality is a twisted reflection of reality is present. So that if you're chased by a tiger in a dream, you're okay, or you're seeing your head cut off in a dream, you're okay. Yes, follow up.
What I was meaning to ask Maharaj is, when we are dreaming that we are being chased by a tiger or embracing a beautiful person, factually we're in our beds in our homes and we're not where we dream we are. So then if we're not factually suffering in the material world, what is our actual situation?
Our actual situation is to be servants of Krishna, eternally connected, and so on. But due to illusion, something else is going on. We're absorbed in something else.
And we all know
Now,
that we can live lifetimes in a dream.
Yeah. Even the experience of going through lifetime after lifetime is a dream itself. If we try to now start, taking out our map software and saying, well, then if this is a dream and I'm in the reality, does that mean I'm in Krishna's pastimes? Does that mean this? Does that mean that? Then we're perhaps stretching the matter too far. But our actual position is that we're not separated from Krishna, not distant from Krishna. But by illusion, we're thinking that we're independent, that we're distant, that we have nothing to do with Krishna. That's illusion only. The actual fact is the fact of eternal connection with Krishna. Therefore, bhakti yogam et hokshaja, by direct devotional service, the meaningless material existence disappears. The superfluous miseries of material existence subside. Therefore, again, these things are subtle, and in one sense, very simple. And the example is very simple. But this whole question of existence and conditioned life, our fallen state, and all of that, if we try to understand it, pinning down the exact parameters, we're going to have a hard time, because again, this is a dream. Where are we? We're not going to figure it out. And while I'm dreaming, where am I when I'm awake? Just wake up and you'll see. Okay. We're at 5:23. To undertake the next verse is, I think, something we're not going to do. So we could end, unless, well, first of all, are there any other comments or questions? Let's see if there's anything pressing. Otherwise, we can end a little bit early. We're only down to minutes here. Have some kirtan and say goodbye for the week.
Maharaj, I was invited to chant. May I?
Please.
Thank you, Maharaj. You're very kind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Sattva Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kunikiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Thank you for that sweet kirtan.
Oh Maharaj, you're most welcome. Thank you very much. You're very kind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So, Maharaj, how do you like your stay at the Govardhan
It's
village?
lovely.
Yeah.
It's, everything's very lush and nicely set up. Everything's arranged in beautiful fashion. Devotees are sweet and wonderful. So it's a wonderful place. Wonderful place.
Many people are coming there?
Not in the rainy season.
Mhm.
The other seasons, they'll get a lot of people. Of course, they had 10,000 or 20,000. I forget what the number was. People came from all the surrounding villages. But that's Janmashtami.
Do you have plans to come to Mayapur, Maharaj?
No, I don't have any immediate plan for Mayapur. My plan is to go to Vrindavan after Radhastami and stay there as long as Kadambakana Maharaj is there, and Mayapur sometime in the future.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you everyone for being here and joining us for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Jayādvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari.